Imagine yourself stepping out onto the endless horizon of the American frontier. In the mid-1800s, the land is wide, untamed, and unforgiving. There are no supermarkets, no corner stores, and no easy meals waiting to be served. If you want to eat, you have to find it, hunt it, grow it, or preserve it with your own hands. This was the reality of the early pioneers who dared to push westward across rugged mountains, vast plains, and deserts that seemed to stretch into eternity. Survival wasn't about comfort. It was about grit, resourcefulness, and knowing how to make a meal out of almost nothing. Today, we're diving deep into the foods, the struggles, and the incredible ingenuity that kept these pioneers alive during one of the toughest chapters in American history. The Old West was not romantic for those who lived it. It was harsh and merciless. Imagine traveling by covered wagon, your family crammed inside with whatever belongings you could carry. Your wagon is loaded with barrels of flour, sacks of beans, some dried salt pork, and maybe a few precious luxuries if you were lucky, like coffee or sugar. These supplies had to last months, sometimes more than half a year, as you crossed landscapes where farming was impossible and hunting unpredictable, and every ounce of food mattered. Too little, and you starved. Too much weight, and your oxen couldn't pull the wagon. It was a delicate balance between survival and disaster. For most pioneers, the staple of life was bread. Flour was precious, and with it, they made everything from biscuits and flapjacks to ash cakes, bread cooked directly in the ashes of a fire. Yeast wasn't always available, so sourdough became the pioneers' best friend. Families carried a sourdough starter with them, feeding it daily, protecting it as carefully as they would a newborn. Without it, bread was heavy and flat, but with it, they could create loaves that gave strength for the long days ahead. Imagine the smell of fresh sourdough rising from a campfire, one of the few comforts after weeks of dust, sweat, and aching feet. But bread alone couldn't sustain life. Beans were another staple, easy to store, lightweight, and packed with protein. Beans kept people alive when hunting failed. Cowboys and pioneers alike boiled pots of beans over the fire, often flavored with nothing more than a little salt pork or bacon grease. Day after day, meal after meal, beans appeared on the plate. And while it may sound monotonous today, for them, it was survival fuel. Some pioneers even joked that beans were the only reason they had the strength to keep walking. Meat, when available, was both a blessing and a curse. Buffalo, deer, rabbit, and wildfowl could provide much-needed protein and fat, but hunting required ammunition, skill, and above all, luck. A successful hunt meant feasting on fresh meat, but pioneers knew they had to think ahead. They dried strips of buffalo and venison into jerky, smoked meat over slow fires, or salted it down to last through the weeks when game was scarce. Imagine chewing on a tough strip of jerky while the wind howled across the prairie. That leathery bite was often the difference between survival and starvation. And then there were the wild foods, Pioneers learned quickly to forage, picking berries, nuts, roots, and edible plants wherever they found them. Native American tribes often taught settlers what was safe to eat and what was poisonous, a knowledge exchange that saved countless lives. Wild onions, chokecherries, acorns, and prairie turnips all made their way into the pioneer diet. Every berry picked, every root dug, was a victory against the emptiness of the land. Coffee, if you had it, was gold. Nothing lifted spirits more than a tin cup of steaming coffee around the fire at dawn. But when coffee ran out, pioneers brewed strange substitutes from roasted chicory, acorns, or even burnt barley. It wasn't the same, but when you were exhausted and chilled to the bone, even fake coffee was better than nothing. Life on the frontier was never certain, and meals were rarely guaranteed. Food had to be stretched, rationed, and shared. Mothers often went hungry so children could eat. Meals were plain, repetitive, and sometimes barely edible, but they kept people alive long enough to chase the dream of a new life in the West. And every bite, no matter how small, carried the weight of survival. Now, as you listen to these stories of grit and determination, imagine yourself there. Imagine tasting bread baked in campfire ashes, beans simmering for hours in a black iron pot, jerky tough enough to last a month, and coffee brewed from acorns. Could you survive it? Could you endure weeks of monotony, weeks of hunger, and the constant fight against the elements? That's what the pioneers faced every single day. Before we dive even deeper into the specific recipes, the methods of preservation, and the ingenious tricks pioneers used to survive, I'd like to invite you to join our growing community. If you're fascinated by history, by the raw courage of those who carved a life out of the wilderness, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. Not only does it help us keep bringing you these stories from the past, but it also connects you with a community of people who love history as much as you do. So go ahead, subscribe, and let's journey together through the untold meals and survival secrets of the Old West.